Alright, miss. I'm presenting my argumentative research paper on motorcycles and sweetgrass via my vlog. So, the story is Motorcycles and Sweetgrass, written by Drew Hayden Taylor, included many elements and aspects reflecting the post-colonial theory. What is the post-colonial theory? Well, the post-colonial theory looks at issues of power, economics, politics, religion, and culture, and how these elements work in relation to colonial domination. This school of theory looks at what the text reveals about the problems of post-colonial identity. The story Motorcycles and Sweetgrass portrays negative effects of residential schools in correlation to language, mental, psychological issues, and physical health. So in the story Motorcycles and Sweetgrass, language was a severe victim due to negative effects of residential schools. So an interesting quote in correlation to that would be, for instance, that he's speaking big pentameter, Taylor, page 170. Sam has an unusual way of speaking because he's in. So in the story Motorcycles and Sweetgrass, language was a severe victim due to the negative effects of residential schools. A quote in correlation to that would be, that he speaks in Iambic pentameter, page 170. So Sam has an unusual way of speaking his Anishinaabe language. The reason being, Father Mackenzie wouldn't let him leave until he would memorize all the monologues in the residential school, and he would be locked in the shed until all of them would have memorized. Another scenario of extinction of language was evident in chapter 2 between the old man and the young lady. Neen, Taylor, page 21. So the old man I think greeted the young woman who had written "This is First Nations country" on her bumper at the back of her car. So instead of greeting him back in the ancient language, she decided to react in a more negative way, and it was a combination. And this is what she said: it was a combination of disgust, pity, and embarrassment. Page 21. So the quote revealed how Anishinaabe people were ashamed and disgusted to greet another in the same language. The young woman, claiming to be a strong believer of First Nations, had switched perspectives after seeing her own kind, which explains the negative effect of residential schools on the language. Another quote that describes the effect on language in the story would be page 37, when Maggie has a conversation with her son saying, "Hey, honey," she waved. Well, in my opinion, I would say that it's a shame that she wasn't be able to communicate with her son in the Anishinaabe language, and basically she's the chief, and her perspective and her point should be to educate future generations. But of course, in the story, we witness that these people in between each other don't even speak their language. So that's another reason how language was affected greatly by residential schools. Secondly, another negative effect of residential schools was the mental and psychological state of mind. So, this is a quote I found. He had said her name aloud in the forbidden language, page 16. So, at this point, we're exposed that the minds of the victims of the residential schools are extremely sensitive, and we can come to a conclusion that due to the brainwash, they have started to call Anishinaabe, their original culture, their root, and their official language, a forbidden language. So the residential schools were persuading the natives to question their own past knowledge and language. This is another quote explaining that. She was confused. It was possible to be right and wrong at the same time. This place was challenging everything she had ever known before. These quotes are from page 17. From this quote, we witness post-colonialism at its best. Basically, the psychological aspect of their minds is becoming more Christian, and they're officially being colonized. Lillian is beginning to question her own culture as the residential schools were attacking the symbolic knowledge, and they were trying to contradict on what's right and wrong. Last but not least, another negative effect of residential schools was physical health. This is a quote. 10 years of living at residential school plus over half a century of living with the effects of that school and finding new ways to damage his body, page 57. So basically, last but not least, another negative effect of residential schools was physical health. 10 years, this is a quote, 10 years of living at the residential school, plus over half a century of living with effects of that school and finding new ways to damage his body, page 57. Sammy Andag was a broken down man who reeked of alcohol and was a prime example of kids that went to residential schools. So basically sent away. He couldn't really like come home, which he suffered like shell shock, which led to his extreme use of alcohol. From this, we can infer that other types of harming diseases were spread as well. So the Spanish flu, which was introduced in 1918 to 1919, in a 3 month period, it killed about 20 children at a residential school. And physical abuse also consisted of needles shoved in their tongues for speaking their native languages, rape, sexual assault, physical assault, and they. This is another quote on which is in accordance to Sami Ande. So basically, they practically beat him every day. This is page 172. So we're exposed to physical abuse in the book, and John reveals that Sammy was beat every day to a point where he was crazy. Since he refused to give up his language, this same situation leads to the reason why Sammy is an alcoholic. In conclusion, it's evident that post-colonial theory was used and enforced through residential schools. What is sister? Page 11. Stop that laughing. It is rude and not even acceptable in a house of God such as this. So basically, evidently, we understand that Anishinaabe children were not even allowed to do the simplest things of human nature, like laughing. The residential schools not only just did they deprive them from human rights, but correlation to their language, mental and psychological state, and physical health. The effects had got to an extreme where a native was disgusted and embarrassed to greet one another in the same language. Furthermore, we are exposed that the minds of the victims of residential schools are very sensitive. We can come to a conclusion that due to the brainwash, they have started to call Anishinaabe the forbidden language, their own language. They started calling it forbidden. The residential schools were persuading the natives to question their own past knowledge and language. Therefore, it's factual to say entering a residential school was to stop living life and just obey the rules